It's another brutal start as far as the fixtures are concerned for the new Premier League season. We always seem to get the short straw, don't we? We're going to discuss that. We're going to discuss the latest on Benjamin Sesko, Carlos Cuesta's imminent departure, and what is going on with Thomas Partey. We've got lots to get into on today's live episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, how are we doing? Welcome back to another live episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, your host, Harry Symeou. We've got a fair bit to get into this morning. We're going to bring you up to speed with the Benjamin Sesko situation. We've had contradictory reports all within the same 12, 18-hour period. So we'll try and make sense of what's going on with that. We're also going to talk about Carlos Cuesta, who looks as though he's going to be heading off to Italy to take over the Parma job. What an opportunity that is for him. We'll talk Thomas Partey and we'll react to the fixtures as well. So lots and lots to get through on today's pod. But before we dive into it, if you haven't done so already, leave a like on the video. If you're a regular viewer, listener, you'll know exactly what you're going to get. So leave us a like nice and early. It really, really does help. And subscribe to the channel if you're with us on YouTube. If you're listening on audio, make sure you're subscribed on whichever platform it is that you prefer, and leave us a review as well, whether that's on Apple or Spotify. Those reviews really, really do help. So thank you in advance for your support there. Let's get into our first story of the day then, shall we? The fixtures are out, and we know who Arsenal will start their campaign off against come the middle of August. It's not the easiest first game, is it? A trip away to Old Trafford on Sunday, the 17th of August. Now, it's not the ideal fixture, but I'm kind of glad we got a fixture that ends up putting us on the Sunday rather than on the Saturday. And I'll tell you why. Obviously, it's a bit annoying that you got to wait a couple of extra days to see your team play, but it's my birthday on the 16th, and just having to navigate that with the family with an Arsenal away trip, it would have been a little bit difficult. So I figured that it's better that we play on the Sunday, have the celebrations on the Saturday, and off we go to Old Trafford on the Sunday. So that's where Arsenal will be kicking off their season. But the start is a really, really difficult one, isn't it? There's no question about that. There's no doubt about that. We play Man United away first. Then on Saturday, the 23rd, it is scheduled for the Saturday at the moment, we take on Leeds United at home, followed by Liverpool away, Forest at home, Manchester City at home, and then Newcastle away. So in our first 6 games, we play 3 of last season's top 5. It's really, really tough as far as starts go. But you can choose to look at this in one of 2 ways, right? You can either look at it and say, at least we get some of these fixtures out of the way nice and early, like we'd have been to Anfield by the end of August. That might mean that we're playing catch up a little bit, but it means that we've been there, it's done and dusted, and we're not going to have to go there in a title run in if hopefully we find ourselves in that position come the end of the campaign. So getting the fixtures out of the way is kind of one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is that actually you can find yourself behind and playing catch up, which isn't ideal and wouldn't be the most kind of confidence boosting start to the campaign, which isn't what you want as well. I think what this does stress, and what this will have done in terms of kind of sending a message to the football club, or at least kind of giving people a bit of a kick up the backside, is remind everybody that we need to be ready to go when the season starts. Now, I know that at the start of a campaign, you're not often at your best. I know at the start of a campaign, it's difficult to get into that rhythm, to get into that flow, but there is no international tournament this summer. And so there's not really that excuse. We have to hit the ground running. We have to be in as best possible condition as we can be going into the first games. We have to be ready. And part of being ready means getting our business done, getting our signings over the line in time for those players to join up really early in preseason, have that preseason with the team, with their colleagues, with their teammates, with their new manager, and be up to speed and up to scratch as much as possible going into those really, really important games early on. Just a few fixtures that stand out if we kind of scroll through it a little bit further. The 2 North London derbies are scheduled to take place in November. The first one at home is on Saturday, the 22nd of November, and the second one is scheduled for the 21st of February at the moment. So November and February, the 2 North London derbies. What's also quite interesting is that On Wednesday, the 7th of January, we're scheduled to play Liverpool at home. Now, Liverpool could be, depending on how they get on, without Mo Salah at that point because the AFCON is ongoing during that period. Now, we could be affected by that depending on what we do and what happens with Thomas Partey, for example. But at the moment, it feels like Liverpool would be more impacted by that than us, just because Mo Salah is a big factor. He's a huge factor, isn't he, in any game that we play. So, yeah, or that they play. So, yeah, look, not the ideal start, but if you look at the ending of it all, it's not too bad. Fulham, West Ham, Burnley, and Palace are our 4 fixtures in May. Obviously, just before that, in April, we play Man City away and Newcastle at home, back-to-back games. That's difficult. That's tough. But May feels like a good way to kind of end the season for us. Just looking through it, just trying to pick out some difficult periods. November, we play 3 away games. Burnley and Sunderland away. We should win those games based on what we know of those teams right now. But obviously, we've got Chelsea away and the North London derby at home. December is packed as you'd expect it to be. 2 games against Aston Villa in December, home and away. We play them away on Saturday the 6th, and then we play them at home on Tuesday the 30th. So 2 tough games there. Everton away as well. I don't know what that's going to look like as a fixture next season because we don't know how they're going to get on at their new stadium. And Gary Griffin points out that Ghana are not in the AFCON. Thanks for pointing that out. I didn't realize that. But yeah, I mean, that's even if Thomas Partey stays. We'll get into that in a bit, won't we? Because there's a fair bit to discuss around his future as well. So that's my reaction to the fixtures. Let me know your thoughts. I mean, how are you choosing to look at this? Are you looking at it as get the fixtures out the way, done and dusted, move on? Or are you frustrated by the start? I've seen some people online suggesting there's some sort of conspiracy theory around why Arsenal have got these fixtures. I mean, come on. Like, let's not go down that rabbit hole. Let's not bite at that, please. It's not needed, is it? Anyway, let's move on. We're going to talk Carlos Cuesta next. Okay, it appears that Arsenal coach Carlos Cuesta, one of Mikel Arteta's assistant coaches, is off to Italy to manage Parma at just 29 years of age. Now, look, Carlos Cuesta, he came across really, really well, didn't he? In the All or Nothing documentary. He was fantastic in terms of the way he came across. Really good communicator, really smart, clearly has the respect of the players, the respect of his fellow staff members. I think when you have bright young coaches at your football club, not in the top job, so as an assistant, as someone working alongside the top man, you have to be understanding and accepting of the fact that there will be people circling around them. It's not like it was back in the day, right? Where, you had to be a manager somewhere for any kind of relatively sized club to come in and take you away or to come in and want to try and prize you away. We've seen it a lot. We did it ourselves, right? We went and got Pep Guardiola's assistant and brought him to Arsenal to give him the top job. It's no surprise to me that somebody has come in to take Carlos Cuesta away, to try and tempt him. And if you're a 29-year-old and you're given an opportunity to manage a Serie A club the size of Parma, you do it, man. Like, you just do it. And I don't begrudge Carlos Cuesta for wanting to take this on at all. In fact, I wish him all the best. It is a shame that we're going to lose him, and it's going to be really interesting to see how Arsenal go about replacing him. There have been some names floating around already. Jack Wilshere has left Norwich City. Could he be coming back to Arsenal as part of Mikel Arteta's staff? Santi Cazorla's being talked about, although he's still playing at the moment, or was at the end of the season. Gabriel Heinze, former Manchester United and Argentina defender. I know he's got those Manchester United connections, and you might be sitting there thinking, why the hell is he being linked with Arsenal? But Mikel Arteta has often said that he is one of his best friends in football, and he's obviously someone that wants to make his way in coaching and has got a pretty good reputation as well within the sport. So I wouldn't rule that out either. Look, we don't know how Arsenal are going to go about replacing Carlos Cuesta, but this does mean a significant change in Mikel Arteta's core group of coaches. And I don't know how I feel about that at this moment in time. Only time's going to tell us. If we go and bring someone else in who brings fresh ideas, helps elevate us, takes us to that level that we all want to be at, we'll say it was a blessing in disguise. Again, that's not to disrespect Carlos Cuesta and the work he's done, but you hope, don't you, that it's not going to set us back. Replacement and renewal and refreshment is really, really important, but you got to get it right. And so with Cuesta, he's someone that has been on a lot of people's radar for a long, long time. He's been talked about as one of Europe's brightest young coaches. It's no surprise that someone's coming to take him, but now it's on us to find that replacement. And I guess, we were talking yesterday, weren't we, about the stress that maybe everybody is feeling around kind of this summer. And, there's a lot of work to be done. And, we need to do work in the midfield. We need to do work in the attack quite clearly. Some are suggesting that Arsenal are exploring doing some work in the defense as well. And then you think about the fact that now we're going to have to replace one of the core members of our coaching staff too. It just feels like the list of things to do is growing. And that is not going to help those people that are already feeling a little bit anxious about what the summer holds. And that's a lovely segue, I think, onto our next story, which involves a player whose future, as far as we're aware right now, is still very much up in the air, and that is Thomas Partey. Now, I've got to say, towards the back end of last season, I was very much under the impression that Thomas Partey would be given a contract, and as time went on, and as we got into the kind of the pre-season period or end of season, post-season period, all the noises and all the rumblings were suggesting that actually Thomas Partey was really open and really willing, in fact, to stay at Arsenal Football Club, and that he had every intention of remaining an Arsenal player. Now, we don't know exactly what's going on with this, and we don't know exactly what's gone down, but it is interesting that yesterday multiple reports came out suggesting that Thomas Partey is on his way over to Turkish football. Now, again, to be clear, this is not, at the time of recording this episode, been corroborated by any of the usual sources when it comes to Arsenal. This is a report that's coming out of Turkey. It could be agent talk. It could be, something leaked by Thomas Partey's people in order to try and kind of get Arsenal to essentially get a move on and offer him a contract that maybe the player and his representatives feel is more representative of his role at the club and what that role will look like going into the new campaign. I've said it before, purely football reasons, Thomas Partey staying, I think, is important. I think that Thomas Partey is as good a number 6 as you're going to find. If you lose Thomas Partey, you are spending upwards of 60, 70 million quid to bring in a player of that level. And I'm not even sure that any player out there on that market for that price would come in and adapt and be as useful as Thomas Partey is. He was excellent last season. There is always that fear and there is always that worry about Thomas Partey's fitness. And for that reason, I certainly wouldn't be committing to a 3-year deal or anything like that. But a 1+1, something like that feels ideal. You might have to do a 2+1 in order to get the player to sign on. But just think about what you're going to be spending and what you're going to be paying to bring someone in to replace him. And then you get to the point of, is it too many new faces in such a crucial and key area of the pitch? Because one of the reasons I want to keep Thomas Partey is because I think that Martin Zubimendi is probably going to need a little bit of time to adjust and adapt. And in having Thomas Partey there, someone whom he can share the role with, someone who can come in and show him the ropes, someone who's got that knowledge of Spanish football and what that transition from Spain to England looks like, I think he could be a real support to Martin Zubimendi, aside from being a very good player that can offer a lot when he plays. So I'm kind of looking at it and I'm like, well, this is just a no-brainer as far as Arsenal are concerned. But I also appreciate that there's probably a limit in terms of what they want to spend on tying Thomas Partey down, because they probably, just as we do, have that fear and have that doubt about whether or not Thomas Partey is going to be able to stay fit. Now, surely in theory, if he's going to share the role with Martin Zubimendi, you should be able to manage him a lot better and you should be able to protect him a lot more than we've been able to in recent seasons. So it kind of works both ways, doesn't it? But my worry here is I would say, mainly around what we do if he leaves, because I just don't see who that obvious replacement is out there. And if we're talking about Arsenal needing to go and spend in those attacking positions, and we're hearing reports about certain deals, and we're hearing things like this deal is likely to be very expensive, posing a challenge, posing a problem, which is stuff we've heard around Nico Williams and the salary demands. It's stuff that we've heard around Rodrigo, who Real Madrid are said to want 90 million euros for. We've heard so much of this stuff about, high value deals potentially being an issue and being a problem for us. When you start to think about what happens then if Thomas Partey leaves, which is Arsenal then needing to go out and bring in another midfield player, you think about what the market looks like in terms of price tags. You think about what we need to do in attack. We want to bring in a top striker and a top winger. You start to wonder how that has a knock-on effect. And if Arsenal were very confident that Thomas Partey was going to stay, they would have probably allocated greater funds into those attacking areas because of the fact that they could be quite confident in the knowledge that Thomas Partey staying means that with him, Zubimendi, and obviously Rice's capabilities of playing there, and Miles Lewis-Skelly's potential to move into midfield, as well as a couple of others within the squad, you'd have probably thought they'd look at that and go, okay, well, that's not really a priority, and we can focus on those other areas, but it's dependent on us keeping Thomas Partey. So there's a lot of uncertainty here, and this is where the frustration kicks in. I got a lot of stick yesterday for suggesting that Arsenal fans are within their rights to feel stressed, that Arsenal fans are within their rights to feel concerned at the moment. Now, I did make the point that I'm sure there's a lot more work going on behind the scenes than we know. I did make the point that it is relatively early in the window, but we're only about 3 weeks out from pre-season kicking off. So we do need to start getting on with it, and we do need to start accelerating some of these things because, as I say, it's imperative that we're ready for the start of the new campaign. But it's the uncertainty that we're still experiencing at a point where we should be clear. We should know by now if Thomas Partey's staying or going. Maybe within the club, they have an understanding of what the situation looks like and what the most likely outcome is, and they're moving to either, focus that extra bit of resource on the attack because they know he's staying, or they're on the hunt for a new midfield player because they're worried that he's going. I personally don't think we can get away with not replacing Thomas Partey should he leave. I've seen that suggestion. I've seen some people saying it's fine. Lewis Skelly can go in there. Declan Rice can play there. Zubimendi's coming in. Worst case scenario, Mikel Merino can drop that little bit deeper as well, although I don't think that's his best position. I personally feel that if you want to compete on multiple fronts, if you don't want to fall short like we did last season, if you lose Thomas Partey, having already lost Jorginho, you need to go out and bring in a midfielder. So this is big in terms of shaping our transfer plans. And a little bit of clarity would be helpful here. We did hear about a week ago from The Athletic that we were going to be informed or that we were going to understand the Thomas Partey situation a little bit more and a little bit better in the coming days. Let's hope that these reports out of Turkey are not necessarily accurate, because if they are, it means more work for Arsenal to do, and that is not good, is it? It's not good at all. Okay, so we've talked the fixtures, we've talked Carlos Cuesta, we've talked Thomas Partey. We're going to take a really, really short pause, and when we come back, we're going to focus on our main story. We are going to talk Benjamin Sesko, because within the space of 12, 18 hours, we've had two completely contradictory reports from two very reputable sources in Germany. So who do you believe? How are we moving forward, if at all, with this? We'll get into that right after this very short pause. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner pod.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe.
That's right. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. Like and subscribe. Let's bring in a super chat from Nicholas. Thank you very, very much, my friend, for your support of the podcast. Really, really do appreciate it. He says it's like people are unaware that players take holidays. Look, yeah, players take holidays. And I've said repeatedly that if you strike the deal, whether you strike it today on June the 18th or on June the 30th, you're still not going to get that player in at your training facility until, towards the back end of the month, right? Until the start of the new month. I get all of that, but that doesn't mean you can't negotiate. That doesn't mean you're not doing deals. And why are so many other clubs able to get deals over the line and able to make progress on these things? Listen, we live in an age of incredible technology. deals can be done, mate. Wherever you are in the world, someone can pick up an iPhone, someone can send an email. All of this stuff is very, very accessible now. And football never sleeps. And I've heard that from so many people that work within the game, that I'm inclined to believe that the fact that they're on holiday, it doesn't make that much of a difference. Okay, you wouldn't expect a player to cut his holiday short and fly halfway across the world, for example, to undergo a medical. You'd wait and you'd hold fire. But that doesn't mean you can't get the rest of the deal in place. And even in that case that I've described, where a player would leave his holiday, it does happen. We've seen it happen many, many times before. So, yeah, players do take holidays, but it's not an excuse or a reason for Arsenal to still be seemingly being the key word, quite a way behind everybody else in terms of making their moves in the transfer window. Until Arsenal show us otherwise, until we read otherwise, until we hear otherwise, there's going to be that nervousness and that frustration. It's the way it goes. It's the way it goes. Okay, let's talk Benjamin Sesko now then, because I know that's what you guys are here for, really. Let's be honest, transfer talk dominates all, doesn't it? Let's bring you up to speed then with what we've heard about Benjamin Sesko over the course of the last 12, 18 hours. A little bit confusing. Okay, so yesterday, and this was shortly after we did our bonus pod where we talked to Rodrigo, Florian Plettenberg, who, of course, is a well-respected journalist over in Germany, obviously works for Sky Germany. He put this post out. He said, Arsenal are currently not willing to pay the 80 million euros to 100 million euros demanded by RB Leipzig for Benjamin Sesko. There has been no official offer from Arsenal yet. Arsenal and the players' camp remain in contact, but personal terms are not yet fully agreed. Arsenal are still monitoring Victor Gyökeres. It will be crucial to see whether he can move for the verbally agreed 60 to 70 million euros, or if Sporting will demand more. So let's break that down for a minute. Florian Plettenberg said yesterday at 7:30 p.m. UK time that Arsenal are currently not willing to meet RB Leipzig's valuation. Now, the valuation is very hard to kind of put your finger on right now, because all we're hearing is that it's between 80 and 100 million euros. That's a 20 million euro space. And you could be anywhere along that scale. Like, how adamant are they that they want to get close to the 100 million euros? How accepting would they be of 81 million euros, for example? You don't know. So the reporting around this is all very, very vague still. And that makes it difficult to kind of get a reading for what's going on. But when I read this, I got to be honest, my initial reaction was Arsenal not willing to pay 80 to 100 million euros. And I thought, for a player that scored just 13 league goals that last season, they're well within their rights to feel that way. But then I started to think about the need to get our business wrapped up, the need to bring in this centre forward, the fact that we have been looking at this player supposedly for such a long time. And I started to think, well, if you're really that serious about bringing this specific guy in, and you really do believe he's the solution and the answer, and could be that solution and answer for many, many seasons to come, then go out there, do the business, get the deal done. You'd have known well in advance what RB Leipzig were looking for, roughly, because as is the reporting, we'd been in contact with them as far back as last May. You knew it was going to cost a lot of money. If you're not interested in this deal, walk away from it, pivot elsewhere, and go and get something else done. The Gyökeres stuff keeps coming up, keeps cropping up. And I don't know how much of it is agent-driven. I don't know how much of it is legitimate Arsenal interest. I don't know how Arsenal view these two players right now. Do they see Sesko as the clear number one? Therefore, they're willing to pay over the odds to get him? Or is their decision going to be, to some degree, price dependent? Do they look at Victor Gyökeres and think, for 60 to 70 million euros, that makes sense? If we are being asked to pay too much for Benjamin Sesko, we like both players, so we're going to be happy to pivot in that direction. It's very, very difficult to understand what's going on here. And to add even more to the confusion, to make it even more difficult to break down and understand, there was a piece that came out from Bild this morning, and I'll just find that. Bear with me a second. I should have had it on my screen. Hold on a second. Where is it? I must have taken a screenshot of it, surely. If I'm organized, that's what I would have done. Did I do it? No, I didn't do it. Hold on. Just trying to find it. 1 second. I beg your pardon. SESKO build. This is really unprofessional of me. My apologies. Where is it? SESKO build latest. Here we go. So according to Build, Arsenal have agreed personal terms with Benjamin Sesko. And Arsenal have signalled to RB Leipzig that they will make an offer for the player in the coming days in line with their expectations. And we know their expectations are between 80 million and 100 million euros. So who do you believe? Who do you listen to? Who is spot on and who is way off the mark? One source is telling us that Arsenal do not want to pay that money, that they refuse to pay that money, that they think that that is way too much, it's over the odds, and that they don't want to proceed with it at that price. And another source is telling us that personal terms are all done after Florian Plettenberg's told us that they're not done and they're not agreed. What did it change that much in the space of a few hours? Maybe, but I doubt it. Someone's right and someone's wrong. So, yeah, I don't know what to believe on this. I got to be honest. It's all getting a little bit ridiculous and it's all getting a little bit confusing. And there's a part of me that just wants to switch off and not pay any attention to all of this stuff. But we're so invested in Arsenal getting the players that we need, and we're so invested in Arsenal succeeding, that it's very, very difficult to do that, isn't it, as a fan? Because, we're all sort of on tenterhooks. We're all waiting for those updates. We're all waiting for that little bit more information to filter through. So, yeah, Rumble says, I can tell in your voice that you're getting the hump, Harry. I'm with you, brother. I'm getting the hump because, if this is the player that we want, and I'm the first one to come out and say, guys, these negotiations, they're high value, it's big money, they don't happen overnight. But I just thought that 18 days into June, we'd be a little bit further along with some of our primary targets. Now, I always believed that there would be certain deals that we would have to wait till the end for. I always believed that there were certain positions we'd be recruiting for, i.e. the backup goalkeeper, that we would probably be sitting back and waiting for market opportunities before making a move. But in terms of the centre forward that we've supposedly been looking at for the best part of 12, 18 months, I thought would be a little bit further down the line. So there is a bit of frustration. Listen, again, if we get the player in time for pre-season, then all of that frustration, it just disappears, it evaporates, and we're back to being excited about the new season. But until we're at that point, there is going to be that frustration and that anxiety within the Arsenal fan base. And Arsenal as a football club have to understand that and have to accept that. And I'll tell you why they have to understand that and why they have to accept that. Because last summer, and I think I mentioned this on the bonus pod yesterday, when we all knew that the club needed to bring in an attacking reinforcement, we all felt we were a little bit short. I sat there and I said, be patient, be calm. It's early. And what did we get? We got Raheem Sterling on loan on the last day. And we all know how that signing went. We don't need to get into that again. So the point is that based on history, based on the previous, Arsenal fans want to be confident in the knowledge that they are going to be ready for the new season. And looking at the fixture list, by the way, that dropped this morning, that only amplifies that feeling and amplifies that need because, you've got Man United away, Leeds, Liverpool away, Forest at home, City at home, and Newcastle away. Man United, Liverpool, City, and Newcastle in your first 6 games. It doesn't get much tougher than that. So just to summarize on the SESKO stuff, and then we'll take a few of your questions and thoughts from the live chat. It is a little bit confusing with regards to what's going on with Benjamin Sesko right now. As I say, Florian Plettenberg reported last night that no personal terms have been agreed yet, that Arsenal were unwilling to pay something between 80 and 100 million euros, as is being demanded at the moment by RB Leipzig. And this morning, Build say that actually, no, those personal terms have been agreed, and that Arsenal have signalled to RB Leipzig they're preparing an offer that will not disappoint in terms of hitting that mark that they're looking for So we'll see exactly what happens on that over the next few days. Hopefully we get some more reporting around this, and there's a little bit more light shed on what this situation actually looks like. But yeah, so yeah, sorry to be the one that tells you that in a roundabout way. I don't have a effing clue what's going on, but hey, that's where we're at the moment. Right, just a quick reminder, if you haven't done so already, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and all the rest of it. Let's have a quick check-in where we're at in terms of likes. We're going to take a very, very brief pause in a minute, and then we're going to get some of your questions from the live chat. I can see across YouTube and X right now, there is nearly 2,000 of you watching us live at the moment. On YouTube, there's about 800 of you. So there's no reason why we shouldn't have at least 400 likes on the board. It really, really, really does help, more than I can explain, in terms of getting the video out there and getting more eyes on it. So like the video, subscribe to the channel as we continue towards our next milestone. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, you know the drill by now. Leave us a review. It really, really does help. Okay, really short pause once again. And when we come back, your questions for the last 10 minutes or so of the show. Okay, let's dive into the chat box. Halo Mateus says, how about just signing Jonathan David? He's free and no club to argue with, and then you at least have a striker secured. I quite like Jonathan David, but again, he's one of those players that falls into that bracket of not quite elite level for me, maybe just that bracket below. And I know I've expressed doubts about SESKO and doubts about Gyökeres and how their form in their respective leagues previously would translate into the Premier League. So it sounds like I'm being a bit of a hypocrite here in saying this about Jonathan David. But I just think, you know, we've known that Jonathan David's going to be out of contract for ages. And it doesn't look like, you know, any of the really big boys have kind of wanted to take that jump and wanted to make that commitment. And that's odd to me, given that he's available on a free, and that his situation is what it is. So that's a bit of a red flag for me. I got to be honest. But look, I understand why people say that. Again, we've been talking a lot about bringing in priority targets and then maybe bringing in additional attacking reinforcements. A bit like when we were discussing Leroy Sané, right? If you told me that Leroy Sané was coming in as a third attacker, I was okay with it. But as one or two, not for me. Jonathan David falls into that bracket for me as well. If we go and get the striker that we want and bring in a wide player and Jonathan David comes in to supplement that, I don't think it's likely that we bring in three attackers, by the way, but I'm just putting it out there. Then I'm fine with it. But at this stage, yeah. At this stage, I don't think this is a realistic one or even on the cards. Robert says, do you think SESKO will be signed before the January window? At this rate, mate, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. What else have we got? Archangel says, Harry, how long are you giving Arteta? What is your limit? I mean, I've got asked this question so many times since the end of the last season. I don't look at it in that way. I don't look at football in that way. I don't put such tight time constraints on things. If you're sort of hovering above the relegation zone, right, and you've got a club that are really struggling and, you know, circling the drain a little bit, you might look at it and go, well, if we get to December and there's no significant improvement, then we've got to make that change because, you know, we've got to save ourselves because there's so much more at stake. In our situation, I feel like it's a little bit babyish to start looking at a guy who has clearly taken the club forward and going, if he doesn't do X by X date, then he's got to go. I've said it before, in terms of when the time is right to replace a manager, you get a feeling as a fan. You get you have your breaking point. Each of us have our own different breaking points. I know when mine was with Unai Emery, you know, and I was very strong on that. I haven't got to that point yet with Mikel Arteta. So if I sat here and said, yeah, you know, get rid of him now, or get rid of him if we don't win the Premier League by the end of the season, I'd be going against the way that I normally analyze and assess things. So time limit, you're asking me a time limit. Let's review it again at the end of next season is what I would say to that. Like, what are we doing? We're not in the relegation fight where we're having to review quarterly. Like, give him another season. Let's see what happens. And I know the other shit thing about the fixtures that we've got is that we could quite conceivably get off to a difficult start. And then you're going to get that noise. Arteta out 5 games into the season. Arteta out as if he's done nothing in terms of improving the club over the course of the last few years. I'm not going to be calling for Mikel Arteta to be sacked anytime soon. Things have to change. Things have to turn. Things have to turn bad. And I have to have that feeling before I'm going to sit here and say it. I'm not afraid to say it. I wasn't afraid to say it with Unai Emery, was I? And I remember getting a lot of stick for that at the time and a lot of criticism for that at the time. I'm not afraid to voice my opinion if it's my opinion. And somebody said to me the other day, and I get this crap a lot, that, well, you'll never slag off Arteta because you work as a reporter now around the club. And so you wouldn't dare say that. Well, let me tell you something. The day I jumped online and recorded a podcast where I said Unai Emery has to be sacked by the morning, that day, it was against Eintracht Frankfurt, wasn't it? I think, if my memory serves me correctly. I was sitting in the press box the night before at that game. I was in the press box. So I'm not afraid to voice my opinion. I don't feel right now that Mikel Arteta should be sacked. And so I'm not going to start putting ultimatums and time limits on it. Let's see how it goes. We might get 3 months into the season and I might say he's completely made a mess of this and it's time. But I'm not going to put dates on it, because then what you get is people coming to you and going, well, you said this and you said if this doesn't happen by X date. Football isn't that clear cut. It just isn't. Afsar says, looking at the fixture list, would you say Liverpool and Man City are clear favourites to win the Premier League? I don't think you can make anyone favourites based on the fixture list at this stage. It's way too early to be drawing those conclusions. You can have a gut feel around who you think are the strongest team, but the fixtures even themselves out in the Premier League. You need a little bit of luck, right? You might go into a really tough run of fixtures when you're in great form, and all of a sudden that tough run of fixtures doesn't feel so tough because everything's clicking, everything's working. You might go through what looks like a really easy run of fixtures on paper and have some key players missing, be tired, have had Champions League games in between, and end up dropping points in those games. The fixture list is interesting to look at this stage of the season, but I'm not reading into it too much. I've got to be honest with you. Raymond says, hit the like button, guys. Yes, please do, because there's now over 800 of you on YouTube alone, and we've only got 160 likes on the board. Come on, guys. I don't want to keep asking, but it really, really does help. Really, really does help. Mr. Battered says, Harry, you might just want to say a good thing about Jonathan David. It will allow you to pivot if Arsenal do sign him. Cover bases and that. Oh, dear. Well, I haven't done what you thought I was going to do, have I? What have we got? Jid says that people are clicking on the heart emoji on the chat instead of liking the actual video. Is that what it is? In which case, like the actual video as well. The heart emojis in the chat are great, but like the video as well. That's what really, really helps. Gary says, Harry, given the fact that the winger market seems complicated, what about Ferran Torres? 26 goals and 23 assists this season for a player who hardly starts is crazy. Arteta loves players that can play in the front three positions. He's been linked with us before, hasn't he, Ferran Torres? Quite a bit, actually, in the past. Yeah, I mean, I like Ferran Torres, and I think he's definitely better than what he showed during his short stint at Manchester City. But again, we'd be signing what I would class as a bit of a jack of all trades, but not necessarily the master of any. And I'm not sure that that's what we're looking for at this stage in our development. I think we need an explosive, dynamic, wide player, and we need a top striker of a certain build and of a certain frame, I think. Now, I'm willing to compromise on the physical profile of that striker if I think the player is that good. For example, Julian Alvarez, for me, is a top striker. And even though he's not the big man that SESKO is or that Gyökeres is, I think he could offer a lot. And so I'd be open to us doing that. But obviously that doesn't feel very likely or even possible at this stage. But the point I'm trying to make here is I think we have a clear idea of what we need right now. And I don't think going and bringing in another kind of winger / false nine type at the expense of bringing in a striker, I don't think that's going to work. I don't think that's going to work. Mr. Bate Red says, why didn't you give Emery time for his process and phases, Harry? I mean, I've been over this 1,000,001 times, but we'll quickly touch on it, seeing as you're desperate to get a response on the whole Emery stuff. Simple, because at the time, the club was all over the shop. Behind the scenes, you had people like Sven Mislintat there. You had Raul Sanley. And the club was not in a position to push forward as a collective. We were making terrible decisions in the transfer market. We were spending stupid amounts of money on players that just weren't up to it. We were handing out contracts to players that weren't deserving of long-term, high-value contracts. Unai Emery clearly wasn't strong enough. And people say to me, why didn't you give Emery time for his process and his phases? Emery was never allowed to conduct his process. And the reason he was never allowed to conduct it was because he was brought in as a head coach, and he didn't, for whatever reason, have the same clout with the club that Mikel Arteta does, which allows Arteta who also came in, by the way, as a head coach, but still, played a big part in shaping the strategy and the way we were moving forward as a football club. Emery was hired as a head coach. Arteta was hired as a head coach. Arteta was later promoted to manager. But from the very beginning, there was a clarity from Mikel Arteta. You knew what he wanted. You knew what direction he wanted to take the club in. And when he wanted players, the club would go out and get them for him. The club was just as much to blame at that point as Unai Emery. But Unai Emery, for me, was never the guy that was going to ruffle feathers, that was going to make those really tough, difficult decisions. This is a guy, by the way, Unai Emery, just to be clear, who allowed the players to choose the captain. They chose Granit Xhaka, and we all know what happened after that. Unai Emery was responsible for just as much indecision as some of the people upstairs and some of the top dogs at the time. So, listen, it's not that he's not a good coach. He is a good coach, but he wasn't the right fit for Arsenal at the time. We needed someone to come in, grab a hold of the situation and steady the ship. And even if that meant that it was to take us out of those tricky waters, but maybe not be the guy to get us over the line, and that remains to be seen around Mikel Arteta. But Emery was not it at the time, and that was clear. He wanted Zaha, he got Pepe. He wanted and Zonzi, was it at the time? I remember us being linked with in midfield, according to the reports, and he got Lucas Torreira, a completely different player, because someone else was calling the shots. And Unai Emery maybe didn't feel he had the power or the clout to be able to do it, but just continued to work without really making any noises about, the fact that he was being given the wrong tools. And also there was no identity. There was no understanding of where we were going. Like, history has shown that Unai Emery was the wrong manager for Arsenal. Like, I don't understand why we keep going over this, and I don't understand why we have to still keep asking these questions. Emery was not the guy for Arsenal at that stage, given what Arsenal needed at that time. He allowed players to run riot. He didn't have the clout within the club to get the players that he wanted. His footballing identity was all over the place, because I feel like Emery tried to play in a way that would appease the Arsenal fans, but not necessarily, but in a way that was not necessarily true to who he was as a coach. And look, at Aston Villa, like, he's done some really, really good things, but there's also been some really questionable decisions there as well. But there isn't that same pressure and that same expectation at Aston Villa, with all due respect to them. So it's different ball game altogether. Anyway, let's take a couple more. Grady says, would you like to see Locatelli in this squad if Partey was to leave? I was quite big on Locatelli a few years back after the Euros, in which Italy performed really, really well. But I don't know. I'm not. This is my thing with the whole Partey stuff, right? Everybody's asking me, like, what would you do if he leaves? And the honest answer is, I don't have an effing clue. And the fact that I don't have an effing clue makes me desperate to see us keep hold of Thomas Partey. And that is why I'm probably a little bit more anxious than most about what is going on with the Ghanaians' future. So we'll have to wait and see. And Nathan, just to circle back to that previous point, sums it up. The club's been in the best state for the last 20 years. That's a fact, which means that the club were fully justified in moving Unai Emery on and bringing Mikel Arteta in. If you don't think that Mikel Arteta is the guy that's going to get us over the line now and take us to that next level, that's a opinion to have, and it's a fair argument to make, because until he does that, there's always going to be that doubt. But this comparison with Unai Emery is a complete and utter nonsense. And I can't believe we're still even entertaining that. I'm entertaining it. I apologize. Freedom says, hi, Harry. What do you think our priority signing should be? Surely Rodrigo provides a much bigger upgrade over Martinelli as opposed to SESKO over Havertz. Completely agree with that. Rodrigo is a needle mover. Go out and get needle movers first and foremost. That's the most important thing. So if you're saying to me, would I take Rodrigo and have to get a cheaper centre forward? The answer is yes, because SESKO has potential and has the ability to grow, I'm sure. But right now, today, is he much better than Kai Havertz? You can make the case that he's better, but how much better is he? And is that enough to move the needle for Arsenal as a football club, generally speaking? I'm not sure. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Right, look, guys, I'm going to love you and leave you jumping on to Sky Sports News at the top of the hour to talk about the fixtures and whatever else Arsenal related they throw my way. There won't be another episode today unless something major breaks. But yeah, we'll keep you up to date. We'll keep you up to speed. It's a good thing about being off in the summer is that I can jump on whenever necessary and whenever needed. So yeah, hopefully speak to you guys a little bit later on, because of course we're going to make a massive signing by the end of the day, aren't we? And everybody's going to be happy again. I'll see you all on the next one. Take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful, wonderful day if I don't speak to you. And up the Arsenal. Don't forget to leave a like on your way out, subscribe, all the rest of it. Come on, the likes are slacking. Hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of you with us live on YouTube, and just 200 likes. Come on, guys. If you're watching us on X, leave a like, whatever it is that you do on X these days. Otherwise, come over to the Chronicles of a Gooner YouTube channel and subscribe. That way you'll never miss an episode. You can also subscribe to us on all major podcast stores as well. You can check us out on Patreon, where our latest offering is a Victor Gyökeres scouting video as well. Patreon.com/the Chronicles of a Gooner. The link is in the description below. I'll see you all soon. Until the next time, take care. Goodbye.